Famous YouTuber Mr.Beast was arrested last week, but turns out the whole thing was just a prank. But is the real joke on us? Was he in on this the entire time? What are the legal repercussions of a prank like this, and what can body language, facial expressions, and human behavior tell us about what's really going on here? Let's dive right in. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. A couple of days ago, mega viral YouTube sensation Jimmy Donaldson, better known as Mr.Beast, was arrested. They put handcuffs on him, put him in the back of a car, drove him to a police station, put him in a cell, but it turns out that the whole thing was a very elaborate prank set up by a friend of his and fellow YouTube sensation, Eric Decker, better known as Airrack. Now, there is a lot going on in this prank video, a lot of moving parts. There's an actual contract with the police department. We're seeing a lot of behaviors from Eric, a lot of behaviors from Mr.Beast, and it really got me curious. And the question that I had in my head is, just how much about this prank did Mr.Beast know? Did he have zero awareness? Was he really 100% pranked? Did he suspect something was going on? Was he in on the entire thing? And so I wanted to look at this, look at the behaviors, look at some of the reactions, and see what's likely going on here. So in this video, that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're going to look at the entire prank and some of the reactions and behaviors that we're seeing, some of the body language, some of the facial expressions, to see if these are the behaviors of someone who was actually caught off guard and completely surprised by this prank, or if there's something else going on. I also have a very special guest who's gonna join us to talk about the legal side of this prank, because I had a lot of questions about just how legal is this? Like, you're using city resources to pull off a YouTube prank, so I had a lot of questions about that. So here's the way we're gonna do this. We're gonna start by going through just the story. I'm gonna tell you guys exactly what the prank was, then we're gonna look at the legal side, and then we're gonna go to the behaviors, facial expressions, put it all together and see what I think is really going on with this prank video. Oh, and by the way, I don't know that anyone is wondering this, but just in case, if you're wondering who Mr.Beast is, he is a super viral YouTuber who has some of the most viral content on YouTube ever. He makes videos where he gives things away, tons of money, houses, cars, super charitable, philanthropist, seems like a really sweet guy. So the whole thing begins with Eric, who has this elaborate plan to actually get Mr.Beast arrested. And initially it was supposed to be in New York during a trip to New York, and he actually went to New York and he signed a contract with the police department there and had the whole thing set up, but Mr.Beast ended up canceling his trip to New York, so Eric had to relocate and do this in Greenville, where Mr.Beast is actually from. So he went there, he took a couple of days, got the contract done in Greenville again with the police department there, set the whole thing up, and then we got to the actual moment of the prank. So Mr.Beast is in a car being driven home, and he gets pulled over for tinted windows, and the cops now tell him that there's a warrant out for his arrest.
Special key for me? You've got a warrant for your arrest for communicating threats. I'm gonna pat you down, make sure you ain't got nothing illegal, and we're gonna go to the jail and take care of it. All right? Put your hands behind your back for me.
They are handcuffing Jimmy right now.
They put him in the backseat of a cop car. They transport him. Meanwhile, Eric is in another cop car right behind, just kind of trying to get the reaction and trying to follow the story. They get to the police station. Mr.Beast gets his mugshots taken. He's put into a cell where he asks for food and water. He's denied.
I don't.
No, you got to wait for that. You can't do that stuff right now.
Side note, by the way, Mr.Beast has Crohn's disease. So nutrition and diet is really important for his health. So yeah, a lot of questions there. Anyways, after a while, he's let out of his cell to make a phone call, and that phone call is somehow to Eric. So I do have some questions about that. We're gonna cover that, but somehow I feel like we're missing something there because this phone call just happens to be to Eric, who reveals that the whole thing is a prank, and Mr.Beast is relieved. He leaves the station where he meets up with Eric, and there's a bit of a conversation there, and the video ends. On an almost side note, a couple of days after that, Mr.Beast uses some of the footage from that prank that his friend who was driving the car must have taken, judging by the angle, and uploads to TikTok without referencing the prank, without referencing what's going on, and claiming that he got arrested for a joke. So some of this footage was used for a completely separate TikTok where Mr. Beast is not referencing the prank and kind of misrepresenting what happened. So that was another important side note for me. Next thing you know, obviously the video goes viral. I mean, it says, I actually got Mr. Beast arrested. Like, talk about compelling title. So bravo, Eric. What a great video. What a great title. Video goes viral. It's all over the media. People are talking about it. But there are some questions out there. Was Mr. Beast in on this, or was this legitimately a really elaborate and successful prank from a wonderful YouTuber? Because I mean, think like the lengths he went through to pull this off is just unbelievable. Okay, so now that you're caught up on the actual prank and what happened there, let's look at the legal side of this, because that was one of my first questions. One of my first questions was, I get that they have a contract, but can you legally even do this? Like fake arrest someone, put them in a cell without their knowledge? Or even if they know about it, can you use up city resources like this? Cop cars, jail cells, it was all very confusing to me. So I called in one of my very close friends to help us understand the legal side of this. So my special guest today is making a first appearance on the channel. I'm really excited about this. I wanted her on the channel for a very long time. We've been talking for a while, just waiting for the right story, and this felt perfect. She is the internet's go-to legal analyst and the host of the podcast, The Emily Show. You could find much more information about her amazing YouTube channel and her podcast in the description below. But everyone, please welcome to the channel, Emily D. Baker.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for asking me to have a chat about this.
Literally for the longest time, this has been my dream collab. And I'm like, I need something to happen that's perfect for Emily, and I think I found it. But before we go on, Emily, I think it's time to let the viewers know that I don't call you Emily D. Baker.
That's true.
I call you by your true name, Shadow D. Baker.
My one true name, Shadow.
Your one true name. So for those of you who don't know, my nickname Spidey came when I was a camp counselor, and my camp name was Spidey. But Emily was also a camp counselor, and her name was Shadow. So to me, counselor to counselor, Shadow D. Baker.
It was a great job too. I loved being a camp counselor. I really enjoyed it.
It was fun. It was really, like, I think back and I'm like, those were the days.
Easy days.
Easy.
Long days at the time, but they go by fast.
See, this is why I can't call you anything other than Shadow.
That's fair.
So, Shadow, you've seen the footage, you've seen the video, you've watched it numerous times. You kind of freaked out and called me like, what's happening? And I just wanted to know from you. So when I first watched this, there was a big red signal in my head going, I get it. They're saying they have a contract, but something about this feels illegal to me. Like, you're using city resources, you're cuffing a guy, you're moving a guy, and maybe there's some sort of reality show contract clause. I don't know. This is why you're here. What is the legality of this?
Before I watched this, the first time you were like, oh, they did this. I'm like, oh, they didn't use real police officers. And then I watched it and saw that they were signing contracts with NYPD and then signing contracts with local PD. Local law enforcement can contract to participate in films. This is not unusual. NYPD participates in movies. Sometimes they advise on movies. Sometimes they allow for their badges to be used by actors or stunt personnel in movies. So if there is a contract in place, which there seems to be, that contract would likely be for filming, would cover the participation of the officers. The city would get paid, and then the officers would get paid normally overtime or double overtime to participate. So these are not on-duty officers taking away from the city resources. These are likely officers working off-duty overtime and getting paid, and then the city also getting paid to participate. I wonder if that's why he was so upset that the NYPD fell through, because I wonder if those contracts were already paid.
Right. That's part of the reason I was like, okay, so you just kind of, it didn't work out. So what happens with the first contract? You just go, okay, sorry guys, didn't work out, thanks. Or do you probably still have to pay something there.
You may still have to pay depending on what resources they've already set aside.
So that brings me to my other question. So a big part of what we're doing with this video is trying to figure out what the deal is here. If there was a contract in place, would Mr. Beast have to be aware of it? Because otherwise I would have to imagine that, like, the police department is doing a film or a reality TV, whatever, but there's someone not in on it who they're actually arresting, putting in cuffs, putting into a car, moving into a, I would imagine he can sue them legally. Would he have to know?
So legal. First, I hate these kind of pranks. I hate using law enforcement in pranks. I hate that law enforcement went along with this, seemingly informed that this was a prank. Like, I hate everything about it. Second, I would need to see the contract, but I imagine the contract would indicate that all participants are aware of what's going on, because law enforcement has immunity for lawful duties This is not lawful for them to do. Yes, they can have a contract and they're doing it off duty, but if Jimmy's not aware, no law enforcement agency or city wants to take on the liability if a handcuff hurts his wrist, or if, God forbid, the police car gets rear-ended while he's in it, getting transported or something like that. They don't want to take on that liability. I imagine any contract would say all participants have consented to participating in this film. And then we see in the middle of the film that merch is being sold with Mr. Beast's name and likeness on it. Make me also wonder if he's consented to that merch being sold by his friend. Like, I have so many questions, but no, law enforcement can't just go and pretend to arrest you. If they don't have a warrant, if they can't lawfully sue you, you can sue law enforcement. And when law enforcement gets it wrong, those payouts are millions and millions of dollars. Now, whether Airrack told them in this contract that he had all that consent when he didn't is another question. Would Mr. Beast sue Airrack for, well, false imprisonment, kidnapping? I mean, what else? Intentional infliction of emotional distress and other things. Would he actually sue him for that? It's highly unlikely, but could he? Maybe Mr. Beast said he was going to go back after him for millions to prank him back. Maybe it's filing the lawsuit for having him unlawfully detained. Maybe that's the prank back. You get all the lawyers on it and sue him for everything that went down. Maybe that's the payback on this, is a civil lawsuit.
Shadow, are you volunteering to write that letter of complaint?
Oh no, Mr. Beast can't afford me. I'm sure he has his own attorneys.
Love it. So my gut on everything you're saying is
afford anything. That said, I don't practice it in his jurisdiction, and I want no part of YouTuber pranks.
Love it. While you were talking about Eric, my gut is to say that Eric simply does not care. Like, maybe after the fact, he was like, hey, by the way, I'm making t-shirts with your mugshot on them, and like, you don't have anything to say about it.
There might be no fucks given. You're right. There might be no fucks given. And it's, hey, we're boys. He's going to think this is funny at the end of the day. It's not going to really be a problem. But again, I don't like these kind of pranks. And you never know what can go wrong. And if pranks go wrong, people can get hurt. People can get sued over that. We've actually seen prank YouTubers getting injured, ending up in the hospital, getting arrested. These things are a very, very bad idea. Sorry, now I spoke to a mom and a lawyer.
The inner mom came out there, and camp counselor.
It did. You're going to get hurt. I don't want to deal with the blood.
Sit down and have your lunch. Where's your bathing suit? So in the video, they said to Mr. Beast that there's a warrant for your arrest. If he's not in on it, they're lying to him.
Yes.
That's something else he could slap onto the lawsuit.
I'm sure there's an indemnity clause in the contract, meaning if law enforcement gets sued, then you would have to sue Airrack. But if law enforcement gets it wrong that you have a warrant and wrongfully arrests you, then yes, you can sue law enforcement for that. They're not lawfully carrying out their duty. The nuances of that vary by jurisdiction, not to get too lawful, but yes, they lied to him. But there are also times when law enforcement can lie to you. They're not for arrest, but in interrogations and things like that, law enforcement can use ruses. That's not the situation here. But yes, it seems that this is under kind of a filming provision. I would love to see the contracts. I'd be very curious as to what was said and whether or not it was said that the participants had consented, and then whether or not Mr. Beast had actually consented, or whether that was just, sworn on a contract and not really strictly true.
So the arrest has happened, and we both have some questions here. Like, we want to see that contract, basically. But there was one thing for me in this whole video that for me was the biggest red flag, and that was the phone call. Because so essentially he gets one phone call, he sits down, and the police, we see him hand him the phone, and he says, someone here that you need to talk to, and he picks up the phone, and it's Eric. It's not his manager, it's not his lawyer, it's not somebody that would be at the top of his class. It's his buddy Eric, who likes to prank people.
Jimmy was allowed his one call from jail, and I told my cop friends to pre-dial my number.
This is Officer Dildy, Pitt County Sheriff's Office. How you doing? All right, I got somebody here that I was told they need to talk to you.
Hello?
Hey, do you need anything?
I mean, well, he mentioned a lawyer. James said he's talking to Alan right now. Is that his name? If you could just call him and yes, if he's... Yes, I'm gonna need one.
And I'm not seeing a moment from Mr. Beast going, wait, what? Hold on a sec. Why are you on the phone? My buddy who likes to prank people, why is this guy on the phone? I'm not seeing that moment. I want to know why I'm not, maybe they cut it, but I want to know why that moment doesn't exist. Was that for you as well a little bit odd that like there happens to be his buddy on the phone and he's not suspicious about that?
Yeah, there's no confusion there. There's no like, wait, why are you on the phone right now? Because the police pre-dialing a number, there's a lot of reasons that could be. Mr. Beast probably works with local law enforcement because I'm sure that a celebrity of his size does get swatted, does have people try to have 100 pizzas delivered to his house and all of this. So I'm sure local law enforcement is aware of who he is, what his home address is, his phone numbers to his managers and other people they might need to contact. So if local law enforcement has these contacts for Mr. Beast, why would Airrack be the one on the phone? I think that would lead to more confusion. And Mr. Beast was just doxxed by like the New York Post with like photos of his house and everything a few weeks back. So I don't know when this video was filmed or when this went down, but it's realistic to believe that law enforcement would have numbers to contact people for Mr. Beast and in his camp, and none of those people would be his friend Airrack. So again, where is the confusion? Maybe he was caught off guard. Maybe he was stressed. We don't know how long he was in a holding cell. Notice there was no one else in the holding cell.
Correct.
There was no one else in the entire place.
Yeah.
So, and that's not uncommon, depending on the day and time of the week. But it was
and the other thing is whether it's common or not, Mr. Beast wouldn't know that. So
really
like,
wouldn't know that. Right.
Yeah, for me, like the fact that he didn't walk in and go, wait a second, there's no one else here. Like that, I wouldn't expect that because he may not have been there before. But I would expect that phone for him to be handed Eric on the phone, for him for a second to go, hold on a minute. And maybe it did. Maybe that happened and it was cut out to make the video more punchy. I don't know. But for me, that's where I had the most questions.
They're on the phone and Airrack's like, no, man, go again.
Exactly. That's not good enough.
So I don't know if he was in on it or not. I can't wait to see your take on it at the end of the day.
Now, Emily, besides Airrack's video, there's another really interesting TikTok that we both had quite a few questions about, where Mr. Beast is telling his viewers on his phone that he just got arrested because he made a joke about printing money and the government didn't like that.
Okay, here's what happened. I was giving away money, doing my thing, and I made a joke and said, hey, take as much money as you want. I have a money printer at my house. And the government didn't like that. They thought I was printing money. It was a joke.
In this TikTok, we also see footage of him being lowered into the car. And so we see from his buddy's angle, from their phone, him getting arrested. But there's a question we both had. And that question was about timing and how this video could have happened. So why don't you talk about what was the red flag for you watching this TikTok?
Well, my first question from the TikTok is, when is Mr. Beast filming what appears to be on the side of the road? And I want to see it more closely and the audience can watch it. In Airrack's footage, we see law enforcement approach the passenger side of the car, take Mr. Beast out of the car, turn him around, handcuff him, and then put him in the back of the car. When is there time in any of that to film a TikTok? And if law enforcement gave him time to film a TikTok, it's because he was in on the joke and he knew that he wasn't actually getting arrested before he got put into the police car. But if he filmed that intro after and then clipped together the footage, then is he really just promoting Airrack's video and in on the whole thing? But no, the government's not going to think that Mr. Beast is actually printing money. However, the government does crack down on people printing money. I've prosecuted cases like that. Interestingly enough, that would be handled by Secret Service. Local law enforcement would unlikely be the ones arresting you anyway. But I don't know if most in the audience would be like, oh, but the feds aren't arresting you, so that doesn't even make any sense. Maybe that's just me.
I believe that the TikTok is to promote the video because the TikTok was released yesterday. The prank video was released 6 days ago. So I believe that, he had a chat with Eric and Eric was like, hey, grab your phone, just help me out here. Let's get some hype around this. So one way or the other, at some point, Mr. Beast became part of this. The question is, at which point did Mr. Beast become part of this?
When did they come up with the story that Mr. Beast joking about printing money was why he got arrested? Mr. Beast loves a catchy punchline, a catchy thumbnail.
So there's another theory then. Maybe the TikTok is just a TikTok, right? He's got this footage of him going into a cop car. He figures, why not make a TikTok, get a couple of other million views? This is good footage. To any influencer, footage of them going into a cop car is like, oh, I can use this for views. So maybe he's like, let me just grab my phone, make this video. Maybe it promotes the prank video. Maybe it doesn't. So maybe this is a very separate thing from the prank video.
How many views does the TikTok have?
The TikTok has, it has 2.1 million likes. Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and assume 12.6 million views.
From a day ago.
From a day ago.
Right.
So, listen, the video is successful and it's creating hype. So again, the conclusion here is that at some point, Mr.Beast goes, okay, I'm in, let's use this footage. How early or how late he joined in on this scheme? Well, let's keep looking at some behaviors. All right, Emily, I want to thank you so much for giving us the legal perspective on this one and helping us just at least rationalize a little bit more what the possibilities are, because that's always such a big help. Behavior can only get us so far, but looking at the facts and knowing all these facts that you just said helps us a lot in trying to determine what's going on here. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I love it. I can't wait to see what your take is. Did Mr.Beast know? Was he in on it? I want to know. I want to know your thoughts. I can't wait.
Chair swivel.
Best chair swivel ever.
Okay, so Shadow D. Baker seems to think that something about this is sus. Like, the best way to have done this was for him to be in on it. That way the city is clear. But maybe the contract covers that. Maybe there are ways out of this. But now let's look at some select clips and the behaviors in these clips that for me were more important in terms of facial expressions, word choice, body language, and some of the key players and how they're behaving here.
I'm behind them, getting ready to light them up. We're pulling in the parking lot. Stand by. What do you guys need me to do?
Okay, so just go up to his window and ask him about his tent.
Hey, how you doing? Look, I stopped you for your tent, man.
Yeah, this is my car.
Oh, it's yours. You know the tent.
Yes, the problem is when I lower it, people stalk me and take photos with me. So.
I got you. Do you have your driver's license or an ID or anything on you? Obviously, you don't have any warrants or anything like that. No. Let me go check that out, and look, if you're good, I'll let you roll. You mind stepping out me real quick, sir, please?
Why?
Just step out. I'll talk to you right here. Just a second, man.
He's pulling him out of the car. He's pulling him out of the car.
Can you just step back to my car for me? Can you just put your hands right there? Right here? Yes, sir, please. Spread your feet for me. You've got a warrant for your arrest for communicating threats. I'm gonna pat you down, make sure you ain't got nothing illegal, and we're gonna go to the jail and take care of it. All right?
Okay, a lot going on in that clip. So one of the questions that I had initially going into this, and that I've seen a lot of people ask online, is maybe the cops aren't really cops. So maybe the contract says we can rent the car, we can rent the police station, but as long as we have actors playing the roles of the cops, maybe Mr.Beast can't turn around and sue or anything like that. So are these even real cops, or are they actors playing the roles of cops? So in this scene, we see a couple of things. First of all, we see him on the walkie-talkie keeping in touch with the other cop behind him. And the way he's talking, the cadence, the tone, the familiarity, it seems very comfortable and seems quite routine. Even the expression, he says, I'm gonna light him up, like when the lights are gonna go off. So it's not this like over dramatized, like I'm going to pull them over now. So we're seeing a lot of language that kind of seems like habit or comfort. But for me, the one moment where I was like, okay, this is a real cop, is when he goes over to the car. And we see as he's walking over to the car, his right hand reaches out and touches the tail light of the car. This gesture of touching the taillight on the way over to the driver's side window is protocol in the United States. And it exists for a couple of reasons. First of all, it allows the officer to make sure that the trunk is closed and latched. That way, once he's up at the window, somebody can't pop up and surprise him. Second, it leaves evidence of his interaction. It puts his fingerprints on that taillight. Whatever the case may be, this is something that cops do. So in this moment, I see this entirely as force of habit from this police officer. I don't think anybody told him, like, make sure to do that. I think it's just every time he does it, he has the habit of doing that. I also don't think that if he was an actor, somebody would remember to tell him, oh, hey, by the way, remember when you go up to the car to do this? I mean, there's a possibility that these are actors that, like, as part of this elaborate prank, took, like, training of exactly how to do this, but I don't think so. I think there's a comfort here and certain things that are being done out of habit that have convinced me that these are legitimate police officers. Then he makes it to the window and we see the driver, who's an associate of Mr.Beast or works with Mr.Beast to some capacity. He's the one driving the car and he's just looking at the cop with a giant smile on his face. And this isn't in any way what you would expect to see from someone being pulled over, trying to figure out what's going on, why they're pulled over. This is very incongruent with that. So I'm not entirely clear on exactly who this is. But Eric did mention that, of course, he had certain people who are working with Mr. Beast in on the prank to help him set him up. And I have to assume that this gentleman is one of them. Again, this is not the behavior of someone who's trying to figure out what's going on. He must be in on the prank. He must have helped set this up. So that's why we're seeing these behaviors. This guy knows what's going on. Mr. Beast, on the other hand, in this moment, is following protocol quite well. You know, he's leaned over. He's giving the cop his attention. He's answering the questions. He's being cooperative. There's nothing about, yet, right in the beginning, I mean, right when he's being told about the tinted windows, there's nothing about his behavior here that makes it seem like he's playing along or that he's suspicious of something. Nothing like that. That part seems pretty protocol. I think, though, that things change the moment he's asked to step out of the car. So when the cops say step out of the car, we immediately see him looking right at the cop, and he's got a smile, but this is a very Mr. Beast smile. He constantly in his content, whether he's nervous or excited or happy or just neutral, he kind of has this smile on his face at all times. And that's a smile we're seeing here. Look at the cop, he's like, and look at the way he says why. It's not why. Like, he's not concerned. He's not worried. It's why. You know, he said dragged why. Because I think that's the one where he goes, okay, something here is odd. And he gets out of the car, and you'll notice he's still cooperating, but he's not concerned for his safety. He's not scared that, oh my God, what did I do wrong? He knows he didn't do anything wrong. There's this kind of demeanor to him where he's cooperating, trying to buy himself a bit of time to figure this out. The normal thing here would be to ask a lot of questions. What is this for? What is this warrant about? Why am I being detained?
Put your hands behind your back for me.
They are handcuffing Jimmy right now.
Bro, I'm tall.
Yeah, it's gonna suck, man.
Bro, he's right in front of me right now. He's right in front of me.
Get in there any way you can. Watch your head.
I don't think I can.
Oh my gosh.
I'll get you there as quick as I can, man.
Let me guess. Let my friend put you up to that.
He's suspect.
What'd you say?
He's suspect.
Do you have anybody that has problems with you or anything that would take out a threat or communicating threats warrant?
I have a lot of people who would.
He's kind of like smiling and stuff. I thought he might like really talk back to you
Stay down,
guys.
stay down, stay down, stay down.
Is he in front of us?
So here we see that he's continuing to take the situation quite lightly. He's quite casual about it. Like when he's being lowered into the back of the car, he goes, bro, I'm tall. Like, what a casual way to say that. That's the way you might say it to a friend or a colleague. There doesn't seem to be this stress or this fear of danger or what's going on. Then he flat out says it. Let me guess, one of my friends put you up to this. So we get the confirmation at this point that he's thinking that something's off here. Something's going on. Now, the other interesting thing about this is if this was a prank that he was part of, would he bring it up like this? And the answer to that is really interesting. Listen, the reflex might be to go, yeah, he wouldn't say that, right? He wouldn't come out and say, wait, is this a prank? But, you know, maybe they're just playing four-dimensional chess to where they know we're going to think that, so they're saying that because we think that they would never say that. It's kind of like when you play games of deception, right? Like Among Us, for example, and someone would go, oh, let me guess, everyone thinks I'm the traitor, when they are, because they're just trying to be like, oh, a traitor would never say that. So is he saying that to throw us a curveball? So we'd be like, oh, well, he can't be in on it. If he said it's a prank, then he obviously is in on it. Maybe this is all part of their elaborate plan. But I do feel like if he was in on this, he would have played it a little bit differently. That at first he would have leaned a little bit more into the, oh my God, what's going on? I'm a little panicked. And maybe then it would have clicked like, wait a second, this might be a prank. I'm not seeing a whole bunch of theatrics here. I'm just seeing someone trying to put this together. Speaking of things that feel legit behaviorally, if we look at Eric, he's in the back of that other car seat and he's really invested in what's going on with Mr. Beast. And there's even moments where he's not quite happy with what he's seeing. For example, in that clip, we see him go, you know, he's smiling and stuff. I thought he was going to be like a whole lot more aggressive. So it's like he wanted it to go a certain way and he's not getting that. So he's reacting to what's going on. And it seems like he's truly reacting to what he's seeing. So if Eric is acting this whole thing out, give the man an award because he's playing really, really well. This person who's excited and curious about how his prank is working out. And we're going to get a lot more signs of that soon. But that to me looks exactly like the behavior of someone who's legitimately invested in this prank going a certain way.
They were. I don't know how they get their head like cop cars. It's a pretty elaborate prank.
I honestly don't think Sheriff Dance would let us do pranks in the patrol vehicles.
I agree. That's why this is so crazy.
But it's so hard to believe this is real.
You've never been arrested before?
No.
Whew, that might be my favorite clip of this entire video. So he's still trying to rationalize this, and he's literally thinking what we're all thinking. Like, how would any of my friends pull this off? Like, there's cop cars here, the cops are here. This is pretty elaborate. Like, he's trying to rationalize this out loud. And he's also kind of accusing the cop of being in on this without flat out accusing him, without saying, hey, are you pulling a prank on me? He's just thinking out loud, which is a really non-confrontational way to try to figure out what's going on. And one of the most interesting lines in this entire video is what the police officer says there. So very often on the channel, we talk about clusters of deception, because no amount of behavior can let you know with certainty that someone's being deceptive, but there are certain behaviors that when they happen together, I can't stress that enough, one thing is never enough, but when they happen together, gives us reason to think that we need to ask a few more questions. It's also very important that these behaviors deviate from someone's baseline. So if someone's doing something a lot or does it usually, it doesn't matter. So in this point, when Mr.Beast says, that he thinks this might be a prank, listen to the answer. The cop says, I don't, so he stammers a little bit, I honestly don't think the sheriff would let us do pranks. So there's quite a few interesting things happening in that answer. First, we have the speech disfluency, so the speech falling apart. I honestly don't, it's falling apart a little bit, which again, if it's alone, doesn't mean anything. Sometimes we're trying to get a sentence out, we stammer on our words. It happens all the time, even when I'm filming my videos. So alone, pretty meaningless. Then we have the word honestly, which is called a perception qualifier in behavioral psychology. And again, a lot of people speak like this very often. It's part of their baseline. To tell you the truth, honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you, but with this officer, I haven't heard him use perception qualifiers up until this point. So he's saying it right here, honestly, and usually this is something we throw in just to give weight to our statement. Like, this is honest. Like, I'm being honest right now. So there's that honesty right there. Then there's an absence of a denial. He doesn't straight up deny and say, no, sir, this is not a prank. That doesn't happen. And whenever there's an accusation, whether it's direct or indirect, and there isn't a denial, that's important. In interviews and interrogations, when someone is told that we think this is happening and we don't get a clear denial, that definitely plays into a cluster. Then we have a non-answer statement when he goes, I don't think the sheriff would let us do a prank. So he's not answering the question as to whether or not this is a prank. He's just saying, I don't think that the sheriff would allow that. So yes, I guess that's part of the absence of denial, but it's also a non-answer statement because his answer doesn't quite answer the question. And then you have sort of a resume statement or convincing statement. So resume statement or convincing statement are statements that we make to build our character as opposed to answer a question. So if somebody were to be asked if they stole something and they go, oh, I'm way too honest to do something like that. So build your character. And in this case, he's not building his own character. He's not saying, I would never, ever use city resources to pull off a prank. But he's kind of saying, the sheriff, like we as an entity, the department wouldn't allow that. We wouldn't do something like that. So it's kind of like a resume statement, but not just for himself, but the whole department. Now, let me make something clear. If this was really happening to me, real life situation, I'm cuffed, I'm in the back of a cop car, and I ask him this question, and he gives me that answer, would it be enough for me to start grilling him and being like, no, I got you, you're pranking me? No, definitely not. I would be in the same headspace that Mr.Beast is in. Like, this is a lot to be a prank. Like, I'm in the back of a real cop car here. So there's a lot going on. Like, I really don't want anyone to think that I'm suggesting that behavior allows us to know in every human interaction exactly when deception is happening. It doesn't. I'm just pointing out a couple of interesting things about that response that in a calmer situation, if I was watching the footage, had a bit of time to think about it, I'd be like, okay, there's a few things there that require a little bit more digging. That's it.
Jimmy's actually taking this better than I thought he was going to. He's just so confused on why he would be arrested.
You get stopped a lot for your window tint.
Jimmy's just not replying to him anymore.
You hear me?
Bro, I think Jimmy's getting mad. He's just not replying to the officer anymore. Listen, this prank is already successful, but it's not gonna stop here.
Okay, so that clip is obviously about Eric's reaction. So the first thing Eric says in that clip is, Jimmy's saying this better than I thought he would. He's so confused as to why he's being arrested. I haven't seen any evidence of that in this clip. Maybe it was cut out. I'm sure there was so much more that they didn't put, so maybe he's responding to something else. But so far in what we've seen, I haven't seen any evidence of Mr.Beast being confused as to why he's being arrested. It's not like he's back there like, why am I being arrested? What did I do? What's the warrant for? So here's what I'm seeing here. Eric had a way he wanted this to play out. He wanted Mr. Beast to get all worked out. He's not getting that. But for his YouTube video to be dramatic and suspenseful, there still needs to be a narrative that Mr. Beast is freaking out back there. Because he's really not. Look at his behavior. He's there in silence. So Eric has to present a narrative that gets the viewer excited. So he's going, oh, he's really trying to figure out why he's getting arrested. No, he's not. He didn't really try to figure that out, at least from what I've seen. So there's a lot that Eric is doing here to present a certain narrative, to put a spin on this silence that isn't quite what he was expecting. Which brings me to my next point, Mr. Beast's silence. If he agreed to this, if he agreed to do this prank, and like, okay, yeah, we're gonna get everyone good, let's do this, oh my God, Eric, you're gonna get so many views, I believe personally that he would give us a little bit more here. Just a little bit more to write about, just a little bit more to talk about. I really feel like this prolonged silence that he has here is legitimately him trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and a big part of him is suspicious and going, don't give a big reaction here. Now again, guys, behavior is not absolute, and I can barely see him. I can't see his facial expressions well. I can't see his body language. And even if I could, there are certain situations where no amount of body language analysis is going to give you a concrete answer. You know, there's a lot of articles out there and a lot of individuals out there who present body language like it tells you everything. It gives you every answer. It doesn't. It's a flashlight in a dark room. It gives us a heading, and a situation like this, there's no absolutes, but my hunch says Mr. Beast is just trying to figure it out in this moment.
Look into the officer's body cam and say, I just got on Get Got.
Oh, wait, so it was you.
Am I able to...
Come on, man, let's go.
Come on.
Show me on the phone.
No, don't touch me.
Okay, here we have the moment where he's told that the whole thing was a prank. So notice how there isn't, again, this over-dramatized like, oh, bro, it was you, oh my God. There isn't, like, there are so often, I see prank videos on social media and I go, no, that is not legit. It happens all the time. Where my friends send me something, I go, nope, not buying it. Where it's like this over-dramatized, like, oh my God, you got me so good. It's not that. It's the moment he realizes, he doesn't even give him the satisfaction of that moment of like, oh, you got me so good. He doesn't even say the line that he asked him to say that's bubbled on top of him. He doesn't even say it. The first thing he says is, am I free to get out of here? He just wants to go. So he's not building that narrative. He's not giving that reaction, that satisfaction. So it's just, and then he swears, where is this mother effer? Which is very off baseline for Mr. Beast. Like, that's not something he does often. So I think it's a moment of like, oh, I knew it, this guy, like just frustration. Then he goes out and they start interacting. And the body language here is quite interesting. You see Mr. Beast putting his left hand out and distancing with his steps. He's putting distance between him. It's kind of like this invisible wall that's pushing him back. He's putting distance. He's angry at him. So this is like, again, it's not coming out high-fiving him. Oh my God, dude, you got me so good. There's irritation here. He's irritated as he's backing up.
Well, here's the thing. I thought it was real. And then I was like, this might be a prank. I was like, this is a lot of resources for a prank. And so then when I got in there, I was like, okay, wait, maybe this isn't a prank.
While he's talking about what was going on through his head, we see this gesture where both his hands go up like this on top of his head as he's talking. And this is such a great example of how body language isn't absolute. We could see things and it can have different possible meanings. And in this case, there are three things that this could be, and it could be a combination of the three. So I'll tell you what they are and we can discuss in the comments what you think. So the first possibility is hand to face or hand to head happens often when we're thinking about something. So you'll often see someone thinking back and you might see this kind of gesture. You might even see this kind of thing while they're thinking back. And although we're not entirely sure why we see this a lot with deep thought, I think it's a fairly safe bet to look at this as a self-soothing adapter or pacifier, which are gestures that we do to calm ourselves down in stressful situations. So maybe in deep thought or stress, this kind of helps self-soothe a little bit, and that's why we see it. Now in this situation, deep thought makes perfect sense. So the first thing that happens, anytime we realize that we've been pranked, in that moment, almost every single time, we go back and try to assess just how foolish we looked. Especially for someone like him, right? Because he knows this is being filmed, millions of people are gonna see it. So we immediately think of our social status and how much at risk it is and how bad we came off looking. Like, how effective was this prank? How bad will it make me look? So it's quite possible that simply the hands are going up like this in that sort of way that they do when we're reflecting on something. And although it's much more common to see this with just the one hand, it is possible, and I have seen it before, where both hands go up as someone's thinking about something. A second possibility, which I think is very likely, is that this is something we see quite commonly with relief. With relief, or like a spike of relief, we often see both hands go up. It could be to the forehead, it could be to the head like this. We might see the head kick back, eyes closed. We might hear a deep breath, or even an exhale, like a sigh of relief. So it's very common to see this. And maybe it has to do with the fact that, once again, this is self-soothing. You know, both hands are contacting the head. There's a lot of nerve endings up there. So this is kind of like almost a self-soothing, massaging, adapting gesture. Another reason we might see this with relief is because it helps us ventilate. So when we're stressed, the body temperature rises. And often when we're coming off that stress, we often see gestures like this, or the arms moving away from the body. A part of the body that overheats very quickly is under the arms. So this kind of thing in relief makes perfect sense because it's helping us get more air to the body to cool ourselves down. The third possibility that might come into play here is that this gesture looks a lot like something that in body language we call catapult or hooding. Two different words for the same thing. And this is when we see both hands behind the head like this, the arms out exactly like that. But this is typically something we'll see like when someone's sitting down with this open body language. And this is something that's commonly seen in someone who's in a position of authority. And it's usually, the meaning of this is like, I'm open, I'm feeling good, I'm confident, I've got all the answers. So this is a power position. It's usually consistent with confidence, authority, and someone who feels like they're in control of the situation. So it's very possible that in this moment, as he's thinking back on the prank, he even verbalizes it. He says, you know, at some point he felt like it was a prank. So maybe he's feeling like, no, you know, I feel good about it. I don't feel like I came off looking that much like a fool. Like it didn't really make me look that bad. And part of him is feeling good about the way he came off in this. So listen, I could see that position being any one of these or a mix of these, but let me know in the comments what you think. Which of these three reasons do you think is the most likely that we're seeing the hands go up like that in that moment? Okay, so we've seen the body language, the facial expressions, we've looked at the legal side. What is my personal opinion of what happened here? What's really going on? I'm 74.6% on the side that this is legit. That Eric pulled off an incredibly elaborate prank, that Mr.Beast was quite suspicious. And there were moments where he was like, no, this is a little too much. But I think there was always this kind of thing in his head to where he was suspicious. I think that if this was fake, we'd see him lean into that narrative a little bit, or at the very least, there would be a little bit more synchronicity between their narratives. There seems to be a narrative Eric wants and a narrative that Mr.Beast is actually giving, and they don't seem to match. So I'm not seeing this kind of scheme that they were both in on from a behavioral standpoint. From the detail standpoint, you know, we have Emily who's saying that it's very unlikely legally that he wouldn't be in on this. We have the phone call that I'm having a really, really hard time with. So there's just these little elements that I'm not sure logistically how it would have happened, and that's where my suspicion is coming in. So at the end of the day, I'm leaning more towards the fact that this was a legitimate prank with a couple of elements that I just don't really understand why they played out that way, but that's the way I'm leaning. However, I don't think it's unreasonable to look at this and go, no, not buying it. I think they just planned the whole thing for views. The contract was agreed upon in the contract that Jimmy was going to be part of this whole thing. I don't necessarily agree with that narrative, but I also can't strongly disprove it in any way. And again, please remember, behavior, body language, it gives us clues, it gives us ideas, and sometimes there just isn't enough to confidently say exactly what's going on. There's been other situations on the channel where I saw enough to go, yeah, I think I know what's going on here. This just isn't one of them. Both sides could be argued and I'd be like, yeah, I see your point. But let me know in the comments what you think. What are you seeing? What are you thinking? Why are you thinking that? Are you thinking that this is just a very elaborate prank that was quite successful? Or are you thinking that Mr.Beast was in on this the entire time? Let me know what you think in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts, and I will see you on the next one.